Former Archangel.
This is where your professional, reputation gets built up, and then slowly gets dismantled by this podcast.
You filled me with the utmost confidence. Okay, so Dean Sheridan, here we go.
Okay, right.
No, go on. What were you going to say?
I was just going to say John Ellis Benton because you said Dean Sheridan in such a seductive way.
Hashtag Performing Arts with John Ellis Benton. And in this week's episode,
Dean Sheridan.
Dean Sheridan.
John Ellis Benton.
It's better when I pay for these calls.
Yeah, it's how I make my money.
So, you also make your money in the performing world.
I have been paid before in the performing world. But if you put the percentage of work that I've done compared to the amount I've been paid...
Well, I think it's a famous fact that actors don't like to be paid in British currency. They like to be paid in exposure.
Yeah, in exposure. Yeah, which is why I will only perform naked now.
You heard it here first, folks. Dean Sheridan will only perform naked as of 2021.
But then technically, is that not paying the audience?
So why performing? What got you into performing? Why didn't you go into accountancy? Why didn't you become a school teacher?
I have been all of those things on stage. Because, I don't know. Well, why does anyone do anything? It's fun. Creative. I was a small fat child. So all I had was my imagination. And obviously I then got into acting because this was pre-13. I hadn't even had a wank by then.
Yeah, I suppose that is when your imagination is at its height.
Yeah, I know. And then I created a fantastic one. So, my teenage years were filled with wonders.
I think mine were as well, but for very different reasons. But what was the thing that made you think... I mean, because obviously I know that you're a bit of a fan of film. Was it watching films, looking at, Liam Neeson and Ewan McGregor getting into laser sword fights?
Yeah, but imagine that, but without the shit film reference.
Ooh.
I was more like Scorsese and things like that, I was, when you're 11 years old and you watch your first Scorsese movie.
Yeah, it's on every...
They're just shanking someone in the boot of someone's car, and you're like, yes, I'm a man now.
And that's what you wanted to do.
Yes. And then I realized, oh, wait, you get arrested for that. But if I pretend to do it...
So that was the thing. It was like all these... I'm going to sound like a complete idiot now. Godfather. That's Scorsese?
No. That is Francis Ford Coppola.
Ah, okay. I might cut that bit out so I don't sound like an idiot.
No, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed correcting you on your own podcast.
What Scorsese films then? Who were in these films? Who gave the performances that made you think that's what I want to do?
So that'll be Joe Pesci, Robert De Niro. They were the sort of like the main sort of like people that were in most. He did Goodfellas, Casino. He did like Mean Streets. Just movies along that sort of. They're all like about 3.5 hour movies. What else he's done? He's done a lot. His more recent ones are obviously more recent, so they haven't had as much an effect, even though they're still as good. Like The Wolf of Wall Street and shit like that. But yeah, they're all those kind of like the old De Niro ones. He was sort of mixed in with them all. So you would have The Godfather in there. You would also have what's it, A Bronx Tale, things like that. I just liked those kind of movies. They were like the big actors of the time, the old 70s, 80s actors. They were just like the best. And they're all like slightly method, but like, although I've never been method really at all. I just can't be bothered.
Imagine if Viggo Mortensen had thought that on the set of Lord of the Rings, just like, I'll pretend that I get on well with horses.
Well, yeah, that's technically what it is. It's just who can get himself to that point the most. Like if I play a homeless person, I don't have to sleep on the street.
So you're more, because obviously there's a famous conversation between Laurence Olivier and
Dustin Hoffman.
Yeah, and he's just like, have you tried acting? So you're more of the Olivier kind of.
Well, no, not really, because I think he was a bit shit as well, which is going to be a very controversial thing. I just think he was a member of his time. Everything was so over the top. I mean, it was theatre. So I don't know whether he was shit live on the theatre. Maybe it was fantastic, but everything was like so OTT. And I was like, there's like a blend in between. You don't need to always be a different person. I mean, it obviously works. Daniel Day-Lewis has like won loads of awards. It's like the most Oscars won by one bloke, and he like literally becomes that character. So I'm not saying it doesn't work, but I'm saying with some things it doesn't always need to be that way. Especially when there are some people like De Niro, who is a fantastic actor, but he always says that he does that kind of thing. But De Niro is always De Niro, isn't he? It's like Jack Nicholson saying, "Yeah, I'm a method actor." It's like fucking what's his name? Like Sean Connery, God rest his soul, saying, "I'm a method actor. Look, I'm playing a Spanish guy with a fucking Scottish accent." He's like, oh, yeah, I'm an FBI agent with a Scottish accent.
I do agree to a certain extent, because then you've got people like Christian Bale, who would walk around the Batman set, not breaking character.
Oh, okay, right. See, this is where I mean like a slight method. I'm talking like go full out crazy method. Like if you're on a set or you're in a play, and you really want to get into it, you go through the scene loads of times and you just really want to live in the moment, which is why you like theatre, because you just stay in that character throughout. You don't break it, not really. So I can completely agree with that. Like if he's on set and that day he's got a few scenes and he wants to stay in the same mindset, I understand that does help. It is hard to break it and completely come back to it. So I do understand that you have to be in a zone and you have to do things. When someone's like they just live their entire life like that character, I just think. But then again, it's just whatever works for you, isn't it? If you're getting Oscars and it works for you, then it works for you. And if you go on and you get Oscars and you're one of the people that just like don't need to do that thing, you just do whatever works for you that gets best performance. Maybe if you're really shit, try method acting.
Well, that's answered one of my questions, why you didn't become a school teacher.
Oh no, but at least that would have been some fucking helpful thing, wouldn't it? He turned around to a kid, he's like, "Oh, Mr. Sheridan, why am I so shit?" And I'm like, "Timmy, try method acting."
So, like you said, you had your 11-year-old preteen, non-wanking self watching these films. What in your head at that age? What was the direction you were going to take to get from here to there?
I had no idea, really. I'm writing things.
Right.
I thought I could get like a camera and make stuff. I used to get like a video camera and like film really, really bad shit. Like terrible shit. Like a werewolf movie that used... Well, no, I had a fox's head as a child, right?
Hang on, can you give that some context?
Well, some friends of the family used to go out hunting. They had accidentally shot it, so she had it stuffed, like the head, taxidermy, and put on like, one of those like little shields that you put heads on. And I thought it was really cool because, I liked horror movies and all that kind of weird shit. And so I was like, can I have it? They moved and they said, yeah. So I got to keep this fox's head. I used to keep it on like my windowsill. And then we used it in a movie when we did a werewolf movie. When we just basically put it under our coats, brought the coat up over, and he had the head. We also did a sort of like remake of The Green Mile, where they did the electrocution scene in a shed. I was the inmate. You see, we were really smart with our effects then. He had a Freddy Krueger mask, so I put it on underneath another mask so that when they took that mask off, it looked like I'd been fried. For the electric effect, they used sparklers from Bonfire Night in an enclosed shed, right? And I was like strapped to this thing, And the effect, you can just see this little kid's hand waving a sparkler, whole place filled with smoke. They legged it out, basically left me to choke to death.
What about in school? Were there any sort of projects in school? Did you have an acting class? Because from doing these podcasts, I've realised that a lot of places didn't.
I didn't do it for GCSE. I did it up to year 9, and then I didn't bother doing it at GCSE. I thought I'd do IT and business instead.
Okay. Was that wavering faith in the ability to get into the industry?
I think everyone just thought it was nerdy, and I liked people not thinking I was nerdy. I was already bad enough. I loved like heavy metal and rock music and had long black hair. The last thing I wanted to fucking do was join the Glee Club.
Okay, yeah, fair point. So you went through school, you did IT and what was the other one?
Well, it was IT and business. It was one class, but I like to call it playing on online games, which is what we called it, or discovering YouTube. Because we did fuck all until like the last week.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense. Yeah. What led you to City College, Coventry?
I got gallstones, so I had to leave the
This is
course.
gonna be
A great story, I can tell that already.
I had to leave the course that I was on. I fucked up my first year. I went to do like video game design, and then I got more GCSEs than I thought because they had messed up in like, I don't know how they messed up, but then they're like, oh, by the way, you got 2 more GCSEs of a decent grade. And then my mate was like, oh, come to 6th form, it's brilliant. It's better than college. Come to 6th form. So I said, all right. And then I went, it was fucking shit. It was absolute shite. I'd just been at college. And where you're free and you're treated slightly like an adult. And I basically went back to school. And it was absolute shite. So anyway, I got gallstones. At the start of my second year, when I went on to try and be like a legal executive, legal secretary on an IELTS course. And then I had to miss like 4 weeks, and it was so like intense. And then my sister-in-law was like, oh, you like acting, you love all this kind of thing, come give it a go to City College. And I turned up one day and I spoke to Gary, who was the tutor at the time, and I said, can I join? And he said, no. So and then I left, and then I went back a little bit later on, and he let me go into, I think someone must have left, and he let me walk into the class. And then I never left, and I stayed until like the end of HND.
Did you not have to audition?
No, did I fuck?
This is explaining a lot. What did you get? Was there anything that surprised you about learning about acting? Were there any techniques that you thought, wow, I didn't even think of that? Was there anything that blew your mind in particular?
Nothing really blew my mind. There were great things that I enjoyed that I didn't think I'd enjoy, like physical theatre or musical theatre. I mean, I would like music, but I didn't think I'd care too much about musical theatre as much as I did. And like, I preferred the slightly weirder stuff that we did at college. I like sort of like breaking the fourth wall a bit. I like doing some slightly more audience involved things. When I went in there, all I ever thought was like, sit down, watch, play, end of. So like, I learned a few things there. I mean, nothing too crazy or shit. No forced entertainment bollocks. Yeah, they're just terrible. I hate them.
Were you ever made to go watch them?
No, I saw a DVD, and it was enough. I almost, like if I was there live, fuck knows what would have happened. I think I'd have set fire to the stage, just in protest. Just like it's just bollocks, man. It's not theatre. It's not. Well, I guess it's something. It's someone doing something. But where you can see that exact fucking show outside McDonald's in the Burges at about 5 a.m. Just a bunch of pissheads falling over and shitting on the floor.
Yeah, I think it's okay to be experimental, but to be downright piss-taking by asking people to pay you so they can watch you do nothing.
React, yeah. When I heard that, I was like, yeah. And I swear to God, right, call me a theatre conspiracy theorist, but I'm 90% sure that they make the majority of their money off of students. That students go and join a drama group and they're fucking... It might be like an in-joke with drama tutors, like a fucking laugh they have that goes on, and they're like, oh, you know what I'm going to do this week? Well, I'm going to send my students to see Forced Entertainment. I'm going to tell them it's brilliant. And then they do it, and they get all these students to go and watch them, and everyone's like, "Oh, it's edgy, it's edgy." And then you get the occasional student who's a bit too scared to say how shit it is because they're scared that they might not think that they're like the right level culturally to understand it. No, I thought it's fantastic, very brave, very brave.
Well, I've got to say, I was unfortunately one of those students. Thankfully, it was free for me. I didn't have to pay for it. When I went to Stratford, we got to see Forced Entertainment at Warwick Arts Centre. And I remember in the interval, my tutor had just bought me a pint of Guinness and we were talking about it, and I was like, this is literally the biggest load of shit I've ever seen. And I'm here because it's free. I'm staying for the second half because it's free.
Yeah, but that's where they get their audience from. And I cannot, it boggles my mind. Now, let me make this clear. I like some strange shit, right? I didn't mind, like, Twin Peaks. Did you ever watch Twin Peaks on TV? David Lynch?
Don't be daft. I've never seen anything that anyone finds interesting.
David Lynch films are just fucking weird, right? But they're like sort of the right level of weird. There's like a storyline through it, and usually a theme that he sticks towards, whether it's...
I know you're kind of like your Sarah Kane as well, don't you?
I like Sarah Kane, yeah. Sarah Kane's awesome. Yeah, but at least that's got a storyline. That's weird. That gets really weird. Blasted gets like fucking weird, like, and it's messed up. And I kind of liked it because it's the first thing we ever did at college that was adult. You know, like before that, it was like, you won't believe it, but Jimmy just had to kiss a girl in a play, and everyone's like, oh my fucking god. And it's like, and then we're like, yeah, well, what are you doing in your play? And we're like, oh yeah, just a gang rape. It's just like, it was just like proper in your face stuff, but it proper, like, after that, you just didn't give a fuck about most things. So I maybe like it more just because of that. It was like the watershed. It was like when you started doing some real acting stuff and dealing with some adult content. Until then, it really showed who was actually really interested in acting and who just liked to faff about a bit. Yeah, so like that. Whereas, like I said, with Forced Entertainment, so that's weird stuff. David Lynch's weird stuff. Forced Entertainment just feels like they turned up on the Friday before the show and then just said, look, here's the prop box. Just run around screaming like a twat for an hour. And everyone will be like, tickets, 40 quid? Yeah, sound.
I mean, it is educational in a sense. It's like, it's teaching you not to end up like that as a theatrical con man. That's my view.
What if, right? So let's go into the conspiracy theory side of things again, right?
Absolutely.
What if they're all mentally ill, right? We're all just paying to go watch them, right? No one's helping them. They're like seeing this shit happen on stage, and I'm like, they're obviously ill. But like everyone's like, oh yeah, fantastic theatre. It's just like a massive cry for help. In that show where they watched the audience, maybe they didn't know. Maybe they thought they went to the theatre to watch a show. Just sat down watching the audience. That's what I think.
It's plausible, if a little offensive. But I mean, would that not be classed as theatre?
Bojo, someone in that theatre is mentally ill, and I'm trying to take the blame off the audience.
And it's a very valiant effort because I don't know. There's a slightly right-wing side inside of me that agrees with your entire statement. But back at college, you have mentioned on several occasions one particular tutor. Won't give his full name, obviously, GDPR and all that shit. But Daniel, he was a particular source of inspiration to you, was he not?
Well, yeah, he did the in your face theatre section, and he sort of like treated you a bit as an adult, and so we did some like crazy stuff like that. And then when we did our H&C and HND, he sort of led it, the acting side, especially in our HND. It was just like a proper little theatre company. Like, it felt like it was just.
Yeah, I think having met Daniel, I think it's he has found a nice balance where he doesn't feel like a teacher. He feels like part of the ensemble that's leading the creative wagon, as it were. For want of a better word.
Yes, we were all part of the creative wagon.
But I mean, just for the sake of argument, let's call it the wagon wheel. So Daniel was driving.
I like to believe I was more a part of the creative monster truck.
Well, I mean, so would forced entertainment, but we can't all have what we want.
I don't know. They're more of the creative hearse.
But yeah, so Daniel taught you quite a lot. Is the impression I get from what you've told me in the past.
It was just freedom to try different things that we wanted. I mean, I had good people I worked with, like a lad called Dave Bench, and he loved certain plays that I did, that kind of naturalistic acting, and he'd bring like plays in, and he would just allow us to do it and like work with us through it, like more like talky pieces, and you do a lot of the same things at colleges. If you go to college and look at your BTECs and that, there's a lot of things get sort of recycled. I mean, I understand it in musical theatre because, there's only so many big musicals that anyone cares about. And they sort of like recycle through some plays. And they're always like, oh, try this playwright, try this. And it's always like big playwrights always do like shows like Road gets done a lot. Trying to think of what shows. You do a lot of bouncers and shakers and that kind of thing. I hadn't seen Teachers before until I saw it when you did. Well, not when you did it, but when it was done in Stratford. They do a lot of those sort of things because they're quite easy. They've got big ensemble casts in them, and you can get people together. You don't really get to concentrate on proper nitty gritty stuff. And obviously, when I was in HNC and HND, the numbers dwindled on your class. There's only 3 of us in our year in HND, so we got to do like. What do we do? Oh crap! How fuck I forgot his name.
So I suppose with the 3 of you in there, it made it you could only choose those sort of real intimate performances that made it a lot more intense than a big ensemble cast.
Well, yeah, there's a lot more words, which obviously isn't always a good thing if you're shite. So you had to trust the people that you were with, and then it gave you a lot more time, like you had to properly develop a character. Before that, you might have been able to get by with like, oh, he's got quite a big bit in the scene, or he's got that. But there was always maybe like one person who got the bigger roles and the larger plays. But this year was like everything that you had to put on was a smaller performance, so therefore you were an integral part of it, and that's whether it was like from a directing point of view or from a staging point of view, or like I say, from an acting point of view. So there's a lot more of you. You're filling 2 hours at a time with 3 people. It's not just tough just to get through and get the lines down and the basic stuff, but to hold the audience attention for 2 hours with 3 people and not a massive budget.
Was that sort of a catalyst when it came to, because one of your first writing projects was Last Supper, wasn't it? Before you took it up to Edinburgh Fringe, and obviously that's only a 3-cast piece. So was that sort of a catalyst to write something small, sort of claustrophobic?
Well, I wanted to take it to Edinburgh. I knew what the Edinburgh spaces were like. I knew how much it cost to take a show to Edinburgh. So, yeah, it was just based on all of that. Most of the plays I do at the minute are that because I don't have the funds. Like when I write something, I want to put it on, or at least have the intention to put it on or perform in it. So what the fuck's the point in writing a 100-hander or some big crazy piece, which just isn't going to happen. At least not yet, and that's something that really sticks with me. But I prefer the more intimate kind of things. They're just far more fun. Like one of my favorite Quentin Tarantino films is The Hateful Eight. Have you seen The Hateful Eight?
No.
You haven't seen it? Oh, fucking hell.
It's still on my to-watch list on Netflix. Yeah, I've heard good things about it, and I know it's quite an intimate thing.
And it's like 3 hours long. Now, I'm not saying I want to do some 3-hour cabin piece, but I'm just saying that you can get a lot out of a one-space thing. That claustrophobia, that intensity, and when things kick off in it, is good, and that works great for if you're taking stuff places. If you're working or putting shows on in small venues or like working men's clubs and things like that, you can transform a space into one thing quite easily and make it really good.
But do you find it difficult? Because obviously, with Last Supper, you wrote that with Lads Night Out. Lads Night Out, obviously. You've done it a couple of times. You've done it in a couple of theatres. Last Supper, you wanted to extend into a film. Was it difficult to sort of extend to write more that you thought would keep the audience's interest, to make it into a feature-length film?
I think by then, when we were rewriting it, I thought it was better. Actually, the stuff I was adding to it was better than what was in it. The first time I wrote it was just a bit. I don't know. I think I could write the whole thing better now. I like the concepts. I like the idea. I do like the way everything plays out, I just think some of the dialogue could be smarter. I think it's very preachy. I think some of it's just a little bit on the nose, and I don't like things on the nose at all. I hate it in films when they just overly tell you what it is.
But when you say preachy and on the nose, do you mean from a religious point of view?
Well, no, because it is meant to have religious connotations, but I think it was too obvious it was meant to have religious connotations rather than... I think the story itself tells it. I didn't need to do, like, crazy things I thought were smart, like, having his name be what name, and then, like, Peter, and having it, like, relate to different parts of the Bible, or, I just think the story itself shows it to be what it is. There are just some things in it that I just thought were a little bit too on the nose, or some slightly unnatural dialogue that I would change today.
Fair enough. Would that be... Because I'm going to compare it just because it makes me laugh to think of it. So going back and changing your...
Titanic.
What?
You're not comparing it to Titanic, are you?
No. Why would I compare it to Titanic?
I don't know. I was just trying to go for what you thought would be the weirdest thing to compare it to. That's like fucking nothing like Titanic.
No, I was going to say, the perfect example of someone who likes to go back on his own work and change it is George Lucas, which I know you're a massive...
you could fuck right off there, Bodge.
I'm comparing you to George Lucas. Is that not a compliment?
Oh, well, I guess he's had a fucking good life and that. I mean, I want his ranch. I mean, he obviously had his, like, spark of inspiration in the 70s. And then since then, it's sort of been a bit downhill, really, hasn't it? What's he done? Indiana Jones and the first three Indiana Jones and... Oh, wait, he did American Graffiti, which is actually quite a big deal to the slightly older generation, just before he did...
Star Wars. Just before he did that other one. But yeah, anyway, that was just...
The one about the wars and the stars. That one.
Oh, when the stars fight each other.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. American Idol. Yeah. Yes, yeah.
Now, one thing you've got on your CV, which I must admit I've seen little to nothing of on other people's CVs throughout this series, is voice work. Now, for anyone who's listening, the voice you've been hearing is Dean Sheridan's. In case no one read the title. And it's quite a distinctive voice. Do you find that help or a hindrance?
Helpful, I think. I could change it quite a bit. I could do many accents and things. But it's quite helpful. People seem to enjoy it. And again, it's not something that I woke up and went, I ever thought that. It was something I learned over time from people's reactions to it. Like people will come back to a show, oh, Jesus, your voice was booming or something like that. So usually when I do voice work or even any stage work, it's like anyone does. They try and speak up a bit clearer and a bit better. I don't know, people tend to like it. I got paid for doing an advertisement for a recording studio around the corner from me, where I played an animated microphone called Ranty. If you want to see it, look up Meet Ranty on YouTube. And he's just a dickhead microphone who's just shouting, but like it works well for me. I don't know. I've done some things that people ask me. I'll try anything, any kind of voice and things like that.
But does it not worry you that you would be typecast? Because obviously you've been doing pantomimes for probably going on the last 7-8 years now. Does it not get frustrating when they cast you as the villain? Or do you just enjoy that because you're playing to your strengths?
I love being a villain, and I completely believe in. But when someone says, "Oh, I'm a versatile actor," I think most actors could do a good job of most things if you are a good actor. But you're bullshitting to say you're not particularly good at certain things. So I know if someone gives me a bad guy, I'm going to be really fucking good at it, and I'll probably be better than someone else that was there. But they might know that if I got cast as, so when we did Frankenstein, I know when I play the monster, and also because of my proportions as well, it's going to be...
That sounds very... because I've got a lot of girth.
It's gonna come across well. And I know that if someone gave me like a soppy love interest or something, it wouldn't. You know, I could never be. Is it Anthony in Sweeney Todd?
Yes.
Yeah, I could never be Anthony in a million fucking years. I don't know. I think I could. I could. Oh, sorry, Wesley not in a million years. I think I could do it, but it definitely wouldn't be the first choice in anyone's eyes.
Yeah,
If you went into audition, that's why you play to your strengths. Because I think one of the worst things I did was, well, actually, one of the best things because the show was absolutely shite. But I went to London to audition for Batman: The Arena Tour.
Oh yeah. What was the process before you get into that?
Well, it was open audition, wasn't it? So it's just like 700 people, and like some of them were already dressed up as Batman because I suppose that helps you get the role. Because I'm pretty sure Christian Bale walked in his full-on Derek Trotter gear.
Yeah.
Yeah, method. There was just a guy battering a burglar on the corner of the street getting ready for his audition. Because there are so many people, they bring you in groups, and then they give you like a small, I'd say it was a little bit more than a line, like 2 lines, a little thing. And they just go around, you. And then they'll be like, okay, I just want him and him to stay at the end. And then out of 30 people, they've whittled it down to the 2 people in the room. So you don't really stand a massive chance in the first place where it's that kind of open audition. But obviously you stand a better chance if you play towards your strengths. And then for some reason I had in my head that I wanted to go for the Joker. And then I just did some like weird Heath Ledger impression in the middle of the room. And then as I left, I just thought to myself, what if I didn't go for Batman? Why didn't I go up there and do the, like Kevin Conroy, like Gotham City, that kind of Dark Knight.
Hey, give it your best shot. If there's people listening to this, they're not seeing you, they're listening to you. Do your Batman voice.
I don't know. I no, you put me on the spot now.
Well, can we at least hear your Heath Ledger impression?
Oh, God, it was terrible. Yeah. This city needs a better class of criminal. And I'm going to give it to him.
That was all right. That was like a cross between Heath Ledger's Joker and Ben Kingsley's Mandarin. It was like Chinese theatre. And you mentioned Frankenstein a minute ago. Yes. Famously, playing the creature is an incredibly difficult role to play. But not only did you play the creature, you wrote it and directed it. So take me through your process of it, first of all. I mean, first of all, the casting process. Did you write it with yourself in mind?
Yeah, I was always going to play the monster. Well, I thought to myself, of the 3 gifts brought to baby Jesus, Frankenstein was my favorite.
I genuinely nearly spat my drink out.
Right. Right. Yeah. I love Gothic horror, right? And it was when you did Frankenstein, I didn't actually get to see it in Stratford. And I realized these are public domain stories. So as long as someone has decent writing ability, you can get bums on seats in the theatre. Because people will roll out to see Dracula.
In the theatre.
Yeah, everybody remembers that. Back in the day. I saw that, you didn't have to pay rights. They're all in the public domain. And as long as you were a decent writer, you could make a story out of it.
I mean, a lot of people listening to this might think that writing yourself into one of the, I mean, particularly a title part, might be sort of big-headed, but it's drilled into us from the very start of education in theatre. Make work for yourself because it's a bitch to get into. Yeah,
if there's no work going at the minute, do it for yourself. I usually try not to give myself the biggest. So like I did it chronologically. I did it just like non-chronologically. Sorry, I did it just like the book. So the monster actually does nothing till the end of Act 1. Yeah. And only really has a biggish part in Act 2. So he had a good chunk of the start of Act 2. But other than that, it's the Frankenstein show, and so I was never going to give myself that. Also, directing it, I always prefer to have my characters appear in the second half, so I at least have one half of just purely being able to concentrate. So when we did Dracula, I made a big mistake of saying I wanted to be Van Helsing and casting myself, and I was sort of reading and writing whilst doing it. I didn't realize actually how big a role Van Helsing was. So again, he didn't come into the end of the first act, but yeah, he was pretty prevalent in the second. And then in Hyde, I chose to be Hyde, and he doesn't come into the second act. And he has a few like memorable scenes, but he's not in it a great deal. It's very much led by.
Well, Hyde's a different one, isn't it? Because you didn't do a direct adaptation of RLS's novella, did you? You did your own story based on the source material.
Yeah, well, like it's like me putting on Sixth Sense, the show. You all fucking know Bruce Willis is a ghost, and sorry if you don't. So
I knew it, but guess what? I haven't seen it.
Oh, I mean, we all know Bruce Willis is good and well and healthy and alive at the end of The Sixth Sense. And it's just like, what's the big twist at the end of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde? They were both the same person. I want to do something different, so I just did. I just made it about a female who wanted to be a physician in the late 19th century, and she's good, and she wants to train to be a doctor. Her dad is a doctor, and she's been nursing for her dad and helping him, but she wants to join a proper college and have a proper education, and as a doctor who just refuses to let her join. So she goes out on her own to try and trick her, but the trickery doesn't work, tries cross-dressing, things like that. And then eventually, then it goes all sort of like sci-fi spooky, and decides to turn herself into a man so that she can do her education, but always with the intention to turn back into a woman so she can sort of say, fuck you, I was able to do it. But the mental side effects of having those two conflicting personalities come out. Also, just to say that I don't know if you ever want to read it, or if you ever see it, if it's ever on again anywhere, Hyde is still her in my eyes in the play. Like, he's an arsehole, and he has like lots of bad opinions. He's a terrible person, but they're all actually based in her own opinions. You know, like the things you think that you don't act upon. Like, let's say if you had a prejudice, but your logical brain would take you past that prejudice, or you would allow you to learn. But he's like unfiltered. Every horrible thought you had in your head comes out. So she like she loves her brother, and he's great, but she also kind of dislikes her brother because he's a man, and just sort of like lives his life sort of like very bohemian lifestyle. And as much as she loves him for it, she can't help but resent him because he decides to do that when he has the opportunity to go off and be a physician, which she wants to be, but he chooses to do things like hang around with artists and hang out at the theater and sleep in, and you know, and she sees it as him taking his sort of privilege for granted. So as much as she loves him, when she becomes Hyde is very, very critical. He's also turns out to be a gay character halfway through. Well, he is all along, but it becomes prevalent halfway through, and that also plays into a little bit of a role where she gets so caught up in her own thing that at that time, when you think the worst thing you could possibly be is a woman, which is sort of the idea at the time, to do the kind of things that she wants to do, that actually he's in just as dangerous predicament, if not more, at that time than she would be, because he'd probably be arrested or even killed.
Yeah. I mean, but was that a conscious decision? Because obviously I saw Hyde, and it came across as not a sort of politically in-your-face political drama, but it came across as a sort of, flagging issues in the past, which is a common theme to do recently. Was that a conscious decision?
No, it wasn't, because I hate nothing more than pushed on that kind of thing. I mean, obviously the choice of doing it about a female who had to become a man to try and do the things that she wanted to do in a time that it was obviously 100% a decision, because that's what's enjoyable about the story. That's how why would she be a Hyde? Like, why would that happen? You know, like why and the fact that she's sort of forced into it adds that extra level to it, and it's also is great too. But I didn't really plan what the relationships are going to be and other things that come up along the way. I just have a base storyline, and then I just start writing dialogue. And if the dialogue leads in a way, and I say to myself, "Oh, that would be really interesting to examine," because it's just me. I'm like having an argument with myself. I could have an argument with myself about anything. I have no particular political persuasion. Sometimes it could be quite politically incorrect. Sometimes I could be the exact opposite, and I don't mind arguing with myself or arguing with someone else or having a discussion about it. So that's exactly what was happening. And then what was happening was I created a brother was meant to be the sort of like bohemian style person. The fact that he ended up being gay was something I thought probably after the first scene I had written for him. And then I thought to myself, you know what would be actually even more interesting if he turned out, well, not turned out, it's not like a reveal or something, but he's quite effeminate character anyway. He's quite artistic. He knows Oscar Wilde. He's like, and I'm like, what if he is that? And that's the thing. Later on, the Hyde character sort of spouts some quite homophobic things. So when I say that he is her, he is, because even though she's a woman of the time and wants to, becomes a man to get further in the career, she has to, because she will be stopped for being a woman. She's still a person of the time. So as much as she knows and loves her brother and the fact that he's gay, she's still going to have some prejudice within herself of the times that she's living in. So like, she's not like some perfect being that's just like, she's from the 18th century, but she was the most forward thinking person in the 18th century ever. Like if you're going to portray someone from that. So although she's forward thinking as a woman, like I want to be a physician, I want to make ways for women, I want to do things like that. The fact that her brother is gay could also be something that she wasn't comfortable with.
Yeah, okay, I see that. So, I mean, obviously I know that you don't like to be politically inclined, quite rightly, because it just opens up all kinds of abusive barriers, and I'm certainly not trying to drag you into it. But would you take it as a good thing or as a bad thing that that's the impression that, say, I got and other people might have got?
No, I think it's a good thing. I think it's more interesting. I don't think everything has to be overly political, everything has to be overly analysed, but if you're going to mess around with human psychology, which is because that's why I write quite many talky things, it's like a lot of it's going to come onto a debate about the behaviour of people and the way that they think. That's what makes things more interesting. So that's how you have completely different characters. They have completely different opinions and thoughts, and whether that makes them a horrible character because they have some bad opinions and thoughts, or a nice character because they're more forward thinking, or like, or an evil character, that's how it works. So the fact that people can see in this the many different elements means that it is more realistic, because I don't think I was going for anything specific, but you can pick up on many different things. It's not much different than today. It's the idea of them getting along fine at the start, but when you add this force, this Hyde, this thing that is just completely unfiltered, everything bad about you, every bad thought that you can't use logic to overturn, every original prejudice, everything in one, and she can't control it, and he's just like, oh, I know you've thought this, I can. It was definitely in there. It had to be, otherwise it would be shite.
Well, the next thing I wanted to go on to then was all these gothic plays that you put on was with the Wheatsheaf Players. You got involved with the Wheatsheaf Players because they were local to where you were living at the time, and you were available at short notice.
I had just come back from Edinburgh. I just slept in a van for 2 weeks.
Riding the high from the Celtic air that you'd just been breathing in for a fortnight. And it was quite kind of a fast thing, wasn't it? Because within a year, you were chairman. Is that right? Was it within a year?
I think about 2 years.
Within about 2 years. How did you feel about that? Because, what are we talking? You would have been early 20s at the time, in control of a theatre company that's been running for the best part of 100 years. You were essentially put at the helm of this very deeply established theatre company within Coventry at a young age. Was it time for some fresh meat?
No, literally, it's the most uninspiring story ever. Basically, Chris, who was the chairman, didn't really want to be the chairman, but just kept putting himself up every year because no one else wanted it. And then one year, someone said, well, if anyone else wants to be chairman, put your hand up, and if someone backs you, then you could be it. Otherwise, we'll have Chris again. And I, at that point, wanted to get a bit more involved on the actual committee and said, "Yeah, I'd do it." That was it.
Okay.
That was the story.
Yeah, okay, that was very uneventful.
Keep it in.
But what did that do for the Wheat Sheaf? Because it must have been a breath of fresh air, going from someone who was there because they had to be, to someone who was there because they wanted to be at the helm.
Oh, because to be fair, even when Chris was the chairman, he did lots. He did lots of stuff. He did lots of things for him. I don't think it made much difference as chairman. I mean, there are a few new people joined that year. I think there's just a lot of people with a lot of ideas at that point that are coming to a place where they just wanted to push with the Wheat Sheaf and do some slightly different things and some slightly different styles of play. I mean, obviously, that was also the year that we lost the theatre, so...
Well, yeah, there is that. Just to say, that wasn't Dean's fault. That's because the theatre was owned by the co-op. They suddenly decided after 30, 40 years that they thought it wasn't doing very well, just out of the blue. And then...
Well, it wasn't doing well because it didn't really pay for itself. It was more that they couldn't afford all their charity investments in the community and sold the building on. So I tried to persuade him not to no avail. Turns out that people like to have money. I didn't know that. Being an actor, I'd never realised money was a thing until that point.
Well, that's, to be fair, that's a good thing. It's the other side of the coin, isn't it? So you go into this industry hoping that you're going to be the person that's, front of the stage that is getting all the money. But you were suddenly at the very back of this group of people controlling the theatre, and you were fighting just to keep the location an active part of the community. I mean, obviously, we know the outcome of the fight. It was lost. But how did that not feel a lot of pressure on you?
Not really. We had a lot of emergency general meetings and had all the members and things in and discussed it. I really wanted to keep the place because it was nice and central and it had a following and obviously a proper theatre. We then sort of moved to like different venues that aren't really like the most theatre friendly. We adapted them to the best we could. We bring in a lot of equipment when it comes to doing shows, but it's not the same as having the old theatre.
Yeah, so the Wheat Sheaf players had been there 30, 40 years, but it wasn't that the company was going to falter at this. It was just that they weren't going to have a permanent...
They're still going now. We try and get more members in and try and do... It's been hard. Obviously, we've done nothing this year. It's just like... If you work with amateur dramatics, everybody wants to be on a stage. They want to go to a theatre. So it's been harder to get more people in, I think, leaving the Wheat Sheaf Theatre. Because back then, everyone's like, oh, it's got the lights, it's got a proper auditorium, it's got the bar. It feels like it is your own theatre. And I think like when you're setting up individually in other places, it just doesn't have the same effect for people. They want to go to, even if it's a shiter company, they want to go somewhere that, they have their own theatre and got their own backers and their own money. I'm used to bare bones. I've been doing bare bones theatre for years, which is great because you meet a lot of creative people because you've got to be really creative to give it the feeling of the grand. I mean, I've seen some shit when they have a budget, right? I could spend half that budget and put on a better show than some of the shit that I've seen, right?
Not mentioning any companies.
No, I'm not mentioning names, but let's just say I went to see a show, right? Let's just say it was a famous musical, right? And let's just say it was about a barber. Okay, that's where we'll leave it, right?
Was this barber a demon?
Yes. And let's say he bought a spot, he was playing Monopoly, landed on Fleet Street. So I went to see the show.
Yeah.
And it looked incredible. It was I'd never seen this show live before. So and they had a fantastic set, right? Brilliant. Like, I'm like, fuck, I'd love to have that kind of budget. And I was like, I was well excited. Oh, God, it's fucking shit, man. It's absolutely dog shit. Like, it was just like the lead man, the hairdresser, had some kind of like nervous condition and could not stand still. So he had no fear factor about him. Let's imagine this is a scary hairdresser we're talking about here in this show.
Yeah. Who does horrible things for the sake of
all over the place. The pastry chef, we'll call that, was fantastic, right? I'm talking like she was like West End quality, which made it even worse. The sheer comparison in between was like it was just like lackluster in places. I mean, that when there were dead bodies being put down chutes, they were obviously alive and afraid of the chutes they were being put down. One of them lowered himself after already being dead. Lowered himself.
In what way?
Well, you know when you're not lowering yourself.
Cocky. I know
You're going to get cocky. This is my show. You won't get cocky.
All right. When you say to someone they're a dead body, you assume they're going to go like completely limp, right? And it's up to you to carry them, right? So you'll probably, if you're a smart director as well, choose the lighter people, obviously. Goes without saying. And then if there was, say, a chute made out of a slide, yeah, and it went from the second story of the stage down to the place where these dead bodies are being stored that you can see, and you can watch them slide down, right? So guys just died, right? He gets picked up by the bad guy, in this case a hairdresser. He puts them in this chute to go down this hole, and as he's getting there, the guy who's just been killed puts his arms up towards the side, lowers himself down the hole. Right, and it was just like, oh, God, it was.
Yeah, it's annoying. It seems like a lot of different companies that don't deserve the funding get the funding.
Well, I don't know, maybe, there might be just rich people that are there. If you can afford it, you can afford it. It's not really, it's just one of those. Sometimes a reputation from maybe a company that used to be very good can stick around for ages, and they're always just going to get it. They'll always get people in the audience. If you've got a big enough cast, they have enough family and stuff, they come along and watch it. They can almost self-sustain. It's also a lot easier to sell a famous musical.
Oh, was this a famous musical?
Yes, it was. Yes.
Oh, what was it? Oh, sorry.
The Barber of Seville. That's it. So it's if you've got the rights to like a big show, you got to get people in to see it. People love musical theatre.
Yeah,
and they might leave and say it's shit, but they've paid. And they'll probably still go and see the next show that the company does, as long as it's a big name musical as well, in the hope that it's not as shit as the first one. But I do find in some of the big companies and things like that that do these kind of musicals, they're like, they all just fucking know each other. Like, you wouldn't want to get involved anyway unless you already knew them or grew up with it, because the chances of getting anything good sometimes is a bit of a risk.
Talking about the unfairness in the industry, you were on BBC Radio a couple of years ago, weren't you? Obviously, you were promoting one of the shows for the Wheat Sheaf, I think it was. Let's
just put this in context. Literally, before this show airs, there is an advert that's like, City of Culture 2021, blah, 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 brings you the culture show or whatever the hell it is. And then he like comes to me and he says, after we've just discussed about Frankenstein, he says, what do you think about the City of Culture? Do you think it's exciting? And I basically was like, no, I thought it was a load of rubbish, and that we didn't, at that time anyway, at least, deserve City of Culture.
Okay, and why was that?
So it was around about the year that the Wheat Sheaf left its theatre, and like we tried to get funding that to save it. I mean, you're talking like a staple part of that area, and I knew lots of little companies like that around that were getting nothing, could get no funding, no help.
Plus the fact, so the Wheatsheaf never got any help from the Arts Council, and it, as we've just established, it's at least 90 years old.
I think it's the oldest theatre company in Coventry, if not the second, but I can't imagine what the first one is. We were on our last legs trying to hold it together. It was our first year away, and I just felt the City of Culture, the money that was being put into absolute bollocks. Like, it wasn't really helping anyone really in Coventry. It was just updating the city centre with Fargo Village, like bubble tea shops and fucking bollocks. So and I'm like, okay, what about all these art groups around? Like, funding was going to new theatre groups and things that were kicking off. So they're just things that like maybe just make you look good and edgy as a theatre group. We've got one real major theatre, I mean the Shopfront Theatre, but we've only got the Belgrade in the whole.
Well, there's the Butts as well, but that's not really owned by a theatre.
Yeah, but that's you just rent it out with your company, you put dance shows and things on there, you know.
Sorry, the Albany, not the Butts.
The Albany, yeah. And you just put dance shows and stuff like that on there, and it's just like we could rent it out if we wanted to, if we had the money, and we thought we'd get enough people in there. But usually, like you say, you usually get groups that put on like big name musicals and that, because they know they'll sell the place out.
Yeah,
and they know they make their money back. Whereas we're not going to try and put on like, I don't know, just a play that we've written. I wouldn't try and put Last Supper on there. You know, I don't think it had really deserved it at that time. I don't think that it was really about the culture of Coventry just making the town centre look nice. And I thought lots of different cultures were shown and appreciated, but I didn't see a great deal. I think I saw one thing near the end about the Irish community and all my family from Ireland.
Yeah, so what about the Irish community? What was it?
Well, it was a massive community in Coventry. It was huge. Like, they all moved over here after the war to rebuild stuff. Like, they built some of the major roads and A roads around. My dad built things like that, and my granddad. And there was just huge communities, like in Balgreen and those sort of areas, were just filled with Irish community, and there was just a massive thing, but it just didn't seem to really be covered.
But yeah, I think you're quite right in saying there's actually nothing to say that the Irish community contributed to the city.
After I'd done that interview and said and mentioned it, I think I then saw that the Herbert Art Gallery put something on. I don't know if it's to do with Irish music or the Irish. I mean, there are two major big Irish bands lived around. The Dubliners and the Furies were always around Coventry. It was just a huge community, and I wish they had done something about it. So that's the play that I want to write about, maybe sort of the 70s era of Irish people, or next gen Irish children being born to Irish families that moved over here. I don't know, it's just an interesting thing that doesn't really get repeated now. There's just nothing about it. It practically built Coventry. But I did say, so honestly, it's not like sour grapes or anything. I did say on the interview that I hoped that getting it would mean that they would do better things for the event than what they did to earn it. I mean, I don't know. I forget who we were up against. Maybe whoever we were up against was just shit. You know, like we were just the best of the worst bunch. You know, so I can't really moan about that. Maybe we were just better than what was there.
Yeah, that's true. With all that, you were just on about the 70s Irish community show you'd like to write. What is next for Dean Sheridan?
There are a couple of things I'd like to write. There's a podcast I'm going to be working on with a friend of mine. Mike is a barrister, and I thought it would be funny if, kind of like this, just sit down and shoot the shit. I would present him with one or two ridiculous court cases, genuine court cases. I'm not just going to make them up. We're not going to be like Mickey Mouse sues Pluto for shitting on his Persian rug.
Although that sounds good.
Well, maybe. We'll see how it goes. We haven't tried it yet. Like, ridiculous cases in history any time, and just discuss it so he can maybe like have a legal standpoint and look at it. Then we'll give information, just discuss it, and just shoot the shit about these incredibly, and there are some out there, and like these crazy court cases. So I thought it might be educational because obviously I'm a layman, so I'll just not present it because it'll be co-presented, but sort of lead it and see if it'll be that if it's like funny and informative. But I can't be 100% on it yet until we try. I'm just going to try and sort of like freewheel it and use these court cases as like the crux of discussion.
To be fair, it's a great concept. Well, I would like to say in some way we've come around full circle. I don't think we have. I don't think there's been any kind of shape made from this. But it's been a lovely chat.
I don't think anything has come to light. Maybe I should try and end with some sort of motivational speech.
Yeah, if you were teaching young Timmy right now, is there anything you could say to young Timmy right now apart from your shit? If he wanted to get into acting,
I'll be like, Timmy, if you want to get into acting, when you make it, let me know how the fuck you did it.
You've been listening to #Performing Arts, a Dumber Archangel Sounds production. Produced and edited by John Ellis Benton. Music by Aaron Crowder.
Dumber